Hello, I'm Sierra Scott. Welcome to It's All Good. This is a show dedicated to people, places, companies, and organizations that are working hard to make the world a better place to live. We see the rich and famous touting their weight loss methods in television commercials every night. But what about the real people? People who don't have personal trainers and private chefs. Can they do it too? Well, if Jerome Biggars is any proof, they sure can. This Wichita man lost so much weight that he's become a national celebrity. And he says if he can do it, you can do it too.
Then once you lose that weight, the freedom that you get from being able to go to a regular store and buy regular clothes, to be able to get on an airplane and not feel like you're sitting in somebody else's lap. To be able to sit in a booth again, to be able to sit in a chair that has arms and be able to go side to side, there's the little things in life, it's awesome.
Can you imagine losing 300 pounds? Yes, you heard me right. Jerome Biggars lost 300 pounds. Looking at him now, it's hard to believe he ever looked like this. But he did. Like most of us, he says the more settled down he got, the easier it was to pack on the pounds.
1988 is when I got married to my wife. At that point, I was 250 pounds. A year later, my first son was born, and I was already up to 350 pounds. Then about a year later, my second son was born, and at that point, I was already over 400 pounds.
By Christmas of 2008, he was up to almost 500 pounds, tipping the scale at a whopping 493.
I could barely walk. I would go to Walmart. The first thing I'd do is I'd have to find a cart, because I'd have to lean on that cart as I walked through the store, and I'd have to stop and rest to pretend to be checking my grocery list just to, catch a breath. And then by the time that I got to the checkout counter, I'd be dripping in sweat, like I just ran a marathon or something.
As miserable as he was, Jerome said he just couldn't seem to stop himself from eating. And the constant barrage of comments from other people didn't help either.
I have a niece that became a waitress. She wanted us to come visit her at a restaurant, so we went, and she went to go seat us, and she tried to seat us at a booth. And of course, I tried to sit in the booth, but I couldn't fit in the booth. So this is rush hour. I'm trying to wedge myself back out. All these people are watching as I get escorted back up front to wait for a table.
As humiliating as that was, it wasn't the only time he felt shame because of his weight. It's interesting that we seem to think it's okay to be rude to people who are overweight.
When you're walking through a store, people will not look at you. They will tend to look away from you. Clerks are you have to go grab a clerk to get help, because they're not going to help you unless they have to. So, children, as you're walking through, big children, ooh, look at the fat man,
We all understand that children occasionally say things they shouldn't, but in many cases adults, who should know better, were just as offensive. Jerome says at one point he was playing in a golf tournament with some coworkers when he was assaulted with words.
And I was sitting in the golf cart waiting for a friend of mine to hit a shot, and a bicyclist rode by, and I went, oh my God, you need to get out of the cart and walk. And so I'm sitting there pretending like I didn't hear this, but I know that everybody else heard this, I was just mortified. So finally, after all this stuff, it just built up to a point that I knew I needed to do something.
But what? Like a lot of us, this wasn't Jerome's first time on the diet roller coaster.
I've done all these different types of diets. I'd lose 20, 30, 40 pounds, and then I would gain it back plus a little bit more.
Sound familiar? Well, this time Jerome was determined to make it work. Around that same time, he went to his doctor for a physical, and it showed all the things that you probably imagine it would for his weight.
I had a physical, and the physical showed that I had high cholesterol, high blood pressure. I had enzymes that were showing issues with my kidneys and liver. I had developed over that summer issues with my legs, my lower legs. I had poor circulation in my lower legs, and they were swollen all the time because I was so big, to the point that if I got a wound on them, I'd have to go to wound care to have them take care of them, because they wouldn't heal because it would just seep fluids.
Finally, sick and tired of being overweight, he began watching people that he'd seen lose weight and keep it off. 16 months later, he's 300 pounds lighter. But it was a very gradual process. At first, he could only get on an exercise bicycle for 15 minutes 3 times a week. But as time went on, he increased that until he met another one of his goals.
So October 10th, I ran the half marathon and I finished it. So I'm pretty excited about that. So I went from December of '08, barely being able to walk, to 22 months later running a half marathon.
Since he's lost that weight, this Wichita man's life has completely changed. He's now the national spokesman for Medi Weight Loss Clinics, traveling all over the United States. He's even appeared on the Today Show.
Let's see the new you. Oh my!
Unbelievable!
Boy.
Welcome.
The folks at the NBC station in Wichita must be so proud of you.
Yeah, they are.
They stop you in the door and say you don't work here?
Who's that guy?
And he was the first cover model for Medi Living magazine.
It's just kind of mind-boggling, everything I get to do now. So.
Before all this, Jerome says it was nothing for him to take in 4,000 calories or more a day.
It's amazing how many calories are in foods. I found out afterwards, like for instance, like Snickerdoodle cookies at Quick Trip, they are about 800 calories a cookie.
Which is almost what your calorie intake for a whole day should be.
Yeah, and I would eat 3, 4, 5 of those a day. The Quick Trip also has those jalapeno dogs, breakfast dogs, so and they're like 700, 800 calories also. And I'd eat a couple of those for breakfast, you know? I mean, it all adds up real quick.
His amazing weight loss had an unintended benefit, even inspiring his wife to make changes.
She's actually, at this point, lost a little over 100 pounds following the same program. So funny, because what happened is that as I got closer to her weight, then all of a sudden she became a little bit more inspired to start losing. She didn't want me to catch up and pass her. So
Jerome says he, more than anyone, understands the importance of having a good role model.
I think one of the key things that I had when I was at 500 pounds was, how in the world am I ever going to lose 500 pounds? So there's that hopelessness that people have. So then if they see somebody's story that, hey, this guy did this, then maybe this is something that I can do. Then they become inspired by the fact that when they start the program and they see that first loss, then they start using that scale as their motivation.
Jerome says there are still a lot of people who don't recognize him when they see him. In truth, they aren't the only ones. When you look in the mirror, do you recognize yourself?
Sometimes I still see the 400-pound person because all of those years of being that big. And then there's other times I'll look and I'll say, wow.
If they wouldn't have been here, what would have happened to you?
I'd probably still be 500 pounds. And I would probably, in another 5, 10 years, I'd probably be gone. I mean, I don't think at 500 pounds a person has a very long lifespan. The key to success is 6 inches long. And that's from here to here. You've got to be right here. You've got to make up your mind that this is something that you have to do.
And when you do that, the sky is truly the limit.
I can do anything now. I've thought about skydiving. I've thought about going to do the rafting on the Colorado River. These are all things I can do now. So and I'm going to do them. So they're on my to-do list, you know.
Jerome says he loves inspiring others to change their lives too.
And I mean, the rewards are just, it's outstanding.
Jerome says another thing that's kept him going is to keep setting goals. His next one is to run a full marathon, and I bet he does it too. Coming up after the break here on It's All Good, we'll take you to a performance that's the first of its kind here in Kansas and one you may never see again.